please make me your focal point? I see almost all eyes. I'm going to wait. I know it's early. Thank you. All right, in just a moment, I'm going to invite you down to the carpet for our lesson. We're going to convene and learn about the Boston Massacre. I want to remind you when you come to the carpet to move quickly and quietly and to stay on the carpet. Sit next to somewhere where you're going to be successful. Sit next to someone where you're going to be successful, where you can have a good conversation with. Okay? You do not need anything when you come to the carpet today, just your brains ready to think. All right, my timekeeper, AT monitor, come on down. As soon as Anna tells us to go, you have Gryffindor, you're in the lead, so you get a 5-second head start, and then after 5 seconds, the rest of you will join us. So I'm going to give you 45 seconds to come on down to the carpet. Okay? Whenever you, oh, I'm sorry, not Anna. Fernando. You ready, Fernando? Okay. Right, the rest of you will join us. People are already making really tough choices. Time. Yeah, you guys were awesome. So add 21 seconds to our to the red. Awesome. And Kelly, can you just go ahead and let me scooch that way just a little bit because I need to walk right here. Awesome. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Today for warm up, I had you read a short story about the Boston Massacre, and then you filled out the timeline to remind us of the events and how they happened in order. Remember, that's what timelines are for. And I remember talking to Fernando, and he summed it up really well. He said, you know what, 2 sides were fighting, the redcoats, the colonists, and 4 men got killed, according to the comic. And that's really what you could have written in this box. So last week, we started learning about the American Revolution and the things that led up to the colonists. Those are starting to get dissatisfied or unhappy. We've been talking about cause and effect a lot. We know that everything in history, well, oftentimes in history, something caused something else to happen. Here's an example of one we did last week. We have the cause. The British spent a lot of money with that French and Indian War. Remember, we had France and we had Britain, and they both wanted the Ohio Valley. They spent a lot of money. Even though they won, they spent a lot of money. So because of that, the British government said, we fought over there. Let's make them pay taxes to help pay for that war. That is the example of the cause and effect that we did last week. Here's what we're going to do today. Anthony, are you my announcer?
Yes.
All right, go ahead and tell us what our objective is.
Today I will inspect and analyze primary and secondary sources of a major event in war history that led up to the Revolutionary War, so that I can compare and contrast sources and discuss perspective and author bias. I know I've got it when I completed a Venn diagram and exit ticket to explain my thinking of the Boston Massacre and its impact on the Revolution.
Fantastic. So as historians, we're going to continue to investigate sources. And we've talked in the past about primary and secondary sources. And we're going to take a look at one of each today. And we're also going to focus a little bit on something called propaganda. That word might be new to you. But basically what it means is artists and authors do stuff to make you feel a certain way, to make you sway your thoughts. And that's what we're going to look at today. So, to recap, I want to review the Boston Massacre because it's really important that we all have the same background knowledge so that when we analyze those pictures, we can really look at them with a clear lens. So imagine, it's March, so it's still a little cold. It's in New England, remember? Yeah, you remember New England way up north? So there's probably a lot of what? Snow. So there's still snow on the grounds. And the British government said, hey, you redcoats, I'm going to send 9 of you to kind of enforce the taxes being paid. Like, just go there and make sure that everyone is paying their taxes and everyone is being peaceful right now. The British government knew that the colonists were starting to get upset. So the British soldiers, the redcoats, they were told they were not allowed to shoot anybody. They weren't trying to start a war, it wasn't a fight, they're just there to keep the peace, to kind of enforce things. Young teenage boys, however, as you guys know, sometimes they get a little bit feisty, and basically they started taunting the soldiers. They started calling them names, making fun of them, they even threw snowballs at them.
So,
I know, it was kind of crazy. So when the snowballs started throwing, chaos started to happen. And when that happened, somebody shot a gun. We're not quite sure. We think that it's the British soldiers because they had the muskets, but we're not sure which side really did it. And as a result, about 5 colonists died and 6 more were injured. That's a very brief recap of the Boston Massacre. As we look at primary and secondary sources, there's a way that historians, steps that they can follow to really look at them. Today, we're going to look specifically at artwork, and we're going to investigate it using these 4 steps. The first step, and it's also going to be listed over here, so that we can refer to it all during class, so we can remember the 4 steps. So the first step is meeting the source. When you go up and you meet somebody, you shake their hand and you kind of just look them over as a general thing. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the picture and we're just going to ask ourselves, what things in the source do I notice? What could provide evidence for my thinking? The second step is observing the parts a little bit more closely. We're going to look at where the focal point is, where our eyes go to first. We're going to look at some of the smaller details. Then we're going to go ahead and try to make sense of it all. This is where we're going to have to use our inferring skills. You guys have been talking about that in language arts, I'm sure, right? Where you have to take your background knowledge and then make sense of it in your brain. And then finally, we're going to use that for historical evidence. We're going to say, well, what does this say about history? This is an example of critical thinking, and I know that you guys have been working on this all year, but I'm going to show you how to do it first before you guys have to do it. All right? All right, let's take a look at this picture. The first step, as we said, we're going to meet the document. I'm just going to look it over as if it's the first time I'm meeting it, just like I would a person. Okay? So I noticed a few different things. The first thing I noticed is there's a lot of redcoats in the picture. I see a lot of red. Right? So I know that the British soldiers were there. There's people fighting. Right here, there's an African American, and it looks like he might be about to be killed. And I also noticed some buildings in the back. Just a general overview of what that looks like. Okay, so what do I see? Those are the things. I want you to turn and talk with a partner, and just tell me one more thing that you see in this picture. Go.
someone smacks someone.
What's that? You've learned about this a little bit, it sounds like. All right. But what else do you see by just looking at the picture if you didn't know that?
One guy who's not wearing
All right, come back to me. 3, 2, 1. I heard Sydney over here talking about how she sees somebody that's not in red, and he's holding like a stick or a club. That was awesome. So when we're looking at documents, we also want to make sure that we look at the title and the caption. That always gives us some more information. So I know that the title is the Boston Massacre, March 5th, 1770. It also says that it's a lithograph. A lithograph, I know, basically means a drawing that was mass produced. It was printed a lot and a lot and a lot to give out to a lot of people. So that's making me start to think about things. So I know that it's a drawing and a lithograph. I've already finished meeting the document. Now I'm going to look at it a little bit more closely. The first thing that I want to ask myself, I'm noticing where does my eyes go to first? When I'm looking at this picture, what is the first thing that I see? I notice, I know you guys want to share, and I'll give you a chance in a minute on the second one, okay? I notice right in the middle, there's an African American. All the other people in the picture are white. So my eye goes right there. He's also, it's pretty violent. So I would say that that's the focal point. Some of the other details that I see, smaller details, I notice there's a lot of weapons. There's muskets and clubs. I notice this red coat. I think somebody said this before, that there's a red coat on the ground. And I also noticed that, especially this guy, because he's like this, he's looking kind of angry. Angel, right? He's looking kind of angry. Will you sit up so I can make sure that you're really paying attention? When I look at things more deeply, I can also take note of the color and the expressions on their faces. So I see that these guys kind of look determined, like they're focused, right? Did you guys notice that too? I see that obviously the colonist looks angry, and I notice that there are kind of some victims. There's some people that are getting hurt. Okay, so those are some things that are happening. Now it's time to really use our brains. That part was easy because we're just looking at the picture. But now we have to make some inferences, using the background knowledge and then also looking at the picture and making a little bit of sense of it. So, the image is pretty violent. I know the author probably created this to show how dangerous it was. It was a very violent event. People died. But I also noticed both sides have weapons. We've got a club, we've got guns. I think that these might be rocks or